Was that the robot? Yeah. Was she roboting there? Was she slurming? She Tai Chi'd into the studio.
Thank you so much.
Don't pander to the guests before I pander to the guests. Hello, Kate.
Hello,
How are you?
sweet.
Nice to see you. Oh, hands across the sea. How are you, doll?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you.
All right, Master, off you go.
5 Golden Globes, 5 BAFTAs,
Golden Globes,
2 Emmys, a Grammy and an Oscar. Our next guest puts the win in Winslet. She now stars in the film Lee in cinemas from Friday. So let's go early with our win of the week. Please welcome the queen of the screen, the great Kate Winslet.
All right, Kate. How are you?
I'm very well. That's so awkward doing the how many awards thingy, isn't it?
It was all sort of long run up so that I could put the win in Winslet joke in the intro. So sorry about that.
Joke?
Well, a lot of people have wheeled that one out before, but I want you to feel.
A, it's rubbish. B, it's been rubbish for ages.
No, we appreciate you. Thank you. I want you to feel entirely original today.
Yeah, because you're not quite an EGOT, but you're an EGOB, aren't you?
EGOB. What's the B part?
So the BAFTAs.
EGOB. I haven't heard that
So
before.
you
I
know-
thought I was just an ego.
No, well, you were an ego for a bit, and then you won some BAFTAs, so that made it better.
Okay.
So James Earl Jones, who sadly we lost yesterday or the day before, he was an EGOT.
Yes, I read that.
So
yes,
he's
I
an
didn't know.
Emmy, Grammy, Oscar,
Tony. Yes.
So how did you get your Tony? And we'll get onto the film in a moment. How are we going to get you a Tony so you can be an EGOT?
Well,
Kate?
you are as passionate about that, it sounds, or determined, as one of my children who figured out years ago, Mum, this is not okay.
Yeah.
Like, there's one missing here.
Yeah.
So, as I understand it, you have to be in a play on Broadway, which I have yet to do. And I haven't actually done any theatre
Isn't
since
that
I was
interesting?
19. Yeah, it is interesting.
Does that? Are you tempted? Is that on the menu
I mean,
at all?
I'm asked this so often.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
No.
gosh.
I'm
Repeated intro, repeated
No, but you're still
question.
original.
We're rubbish.
No, stay on
We
point.
used to be good. We used to be good. We used to be good. Not good anymore, but we did used to be good.
Right, back in the room. I had a child when I was 25, and so when I became a parent very young, doing theatre is pretty antisocial in terms of hands-on parenting because you have shows on a Monday, there's 3 shows at the weekend, so it just wasn't a possibility. And then life went on and I had 2 more children, and I'm just yet to kind of figure it out, but I will at some stage.
Do you think you will or not? By the way, it's fine to say you won't.
No, I'd really like to. I'd really like to.
But you have this production company and this film, Lee, which is awesome, I've got to say it.
Can I just say about the production company part? So it's really only me at the kitchen table, panicking, moving things around and having late night phone calls until I met my producing partner Kate Solomon, and
no, I know,
and now we're all guns blazing.
Hey,
but it is.
You could say, well, Shakespeare was only a quill and a pot of ink, if you like. If you
Yeah,
want
but
to
there
put
you
it,
go.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's all you need.
That is it.
No
Mum
bells and
pop
whistles,
shop.
mate.
Absolutely. But that is it. It's the industry, isn't it? It's the industry. If you've got a phone, which most people have nowadays, if you've got a phone, you don't even need the keyboard now because it's all on the phone.
Yeah.
And off you go, off you pop. Nobody knows anything, really.
Yeah.
Unless you choose to show them. But I know that this film, Lee, which I saw yesterday, has been 9 years in the making.
Yeah.
Right. Thank God you got it made.
Oh,
what
thank
a
you.
film.
Thank
What
you.
a performance from you and your fellow actors and all the producers and the special effects and the set designers and all the costumes. Everybody. It's a great film. But what a woman.
I know.
Tell everybody more, because they're not seeing the film. It's out on Friday. Tell us all about Lee Miller.
So Lee Miller, I mean, if you were to Google her 9 years ago, perhaps even before the film, what would come up was that she was the former muse of Man Ray, a surrealist artist and photographer.
So she was a model.
She was a model, former model. She was a cover girl of Vogue. This is back in the 20s, early 30s. She absolutely hated being a model. It wasn't something that made her comfortable. And she famously said, I'd rather take a photograph than be one. And the decade of her life that we cover in the film is, for me, when Lee really became Lee as a flawed, middle-aged, determined woman who went to the front line and photographed the victims of conflict for the female readers of British Vogue, from whom so much was hidden and so much was kept away as an American.
And it was only because she was an American that she got to be on the front line in the first place.
That's right, because women were not allowed into these male-dominated spaces, and so she had to cut through so much red tape just to get to where she was. And even when she got her US war accreditation to go, she turned up at the field hospitals and she was hit with a man saying to her, "No women allowed in the press briefing." And it was just sort of, it was just really tough for her to get into the places she believed she needed to be in order to become the visual voice for the victims whose stories would otherwise have never been told.
So many questions about this lady. So she was a top model. She was a muse. She was so witty. She was pithy. She had a rapier, sometimes acid tongue. She was almost bored by her own existence. She found company so easy to keep, and then she met an equal, didn't she?
She did.
Did everything in the film happen?
Everything in the film happened. It is an authentic retelling of a decade in her life. And as you say, she was a life liver, which was quite extraordinary given that she had very unfortunately suffered a trauma as a child. But she did not let that trauma define her. And she would not let herself be defined by men. So lifting her out of the male gaze, which is how she had always been seen, was the most important thing for me, because this was a woman's woman. And she was so contemporary 80 years ago, redefining femininity already then to mean resilience and power and courage and compassion. And that's how I live. That's how my friends, my sisters live. That's how we raise our daughters. And so she was such an inspiration even then.
Yeah, but she was still sexy. She had she was a highly sexual relationship with her husband, who she was devoted to. So she didn't hate men.
No, this is the thing to me that was so extraordinary. She could have been a man-hater. She could have been full of malice and vengeance, but she had none of that. Somehow she was able to really love and live life and not judge people. And I think that was almost one of her superpowers, that she could meet people at face value for whoever they are from whatever walk of life. It was just remarkable.
I mean, just her story. I wasn't sure because I saw the Sky logo come up. It was a last minute thing, and thank God it was, because I'm so glad you're here. And I saw the Sky logo come up, and I was watching the first 10 minutes. I thought, is this a series? Because she's so interesting anyway before you get to the war. She doesn't get to the war till halfway through the film. But then she gets to the war, and so much more happens. And you think, but this was at the end of the war, because it almost starts with the surrender, Hitler's surrender. But there was at the end of the war, there was so much of a story to be told, because there were so many secrets to be uncovered.
That's right.
And she was there to uncover them.
Yeah.
And this is on the back of, it's a great testament to the fact just because you have one life, it doesn't mean you need to live one life. You can have many, many lives.
Well, that was the challenge about making this film, and that's why it was 7 years of development until the point of actually going and making the film, and now it's 9 full years, and here it is. I still can't actually believe I'm on your show talking about it, because I have thought about, wow, the film is going to get made, it's going to come out one day, and I'm going to come and talk to Chris. I mean, seriously, I promise you. But the development process was lengthy, largely because she lived so many lives, as you say. I mean, in her later years, she had a facelift and became a cordon bleu chef. I mean, seriously, she was absolutely unbelievable. But I just felt that it was so important to celebrate the most spectacular decade of her life, which stayed with her. She did get terrible PTSD. She had a child after the war unexpectedly. She had a very tricky relationship with her son, Anthony Penrose, who was very much a part of the film and is very much alive today. And like so many people who experienced that conflict, they tucked it away and they never talked about it, just in an effort to forget. But what she did, she was one of the early reportage photographers. And, I've started to realise that were it not for the courage of women like Lee, would female war correspondents now have that place that they rightfully have? Yeah. They've more than earned their seat at that table. And the things that they tell us, the courage that they have to go into those conflict zones and to reveal to us things that we would never otherwise know about. And it's incredibly important so that people's stories and lives are remembered. And that's what Lee started. And it's just incredible, the courage she had.
It wears its layers, this film, very lightly on its sleeve, because it's so layered. Like, she has this great sort of colleague at Vogue that she works with, who clearly fancies their pants off her and is so supportive, but it's completely unrequited, this love. And all the way through the film you think, will they or won't they? And she will absolutely not.
Yeah,
100% not.
Yeah, so you're talking about a wonderful character named David Sherman, who was actually a photographer for Life magazine.
Sorry.
No, that's absolutely fine. And he
later sort of shoulder to shoulder on
that. Yeah, they're shoulder to shoulder. They were inseparable. inseparable. And in reality, he absolutely was head over heels in
was.
love with her, and they did have an intimate
How could
relationship.
you not be?
Well, of course. I mean, she was just so juicy and delicious.
Oh, gosh.
She was extraordinary. And he took a photograph of her once in the Scribe Hotel in Paris, which was sort of their base, really, when they were documenting large parts of the war. But he took a photograph of her and he said, this is the way I love you the most, looking like an unmade bed. Yeah. And isn't that wonderful? What a wonderful way to describe a middle-aged, sexy, powerful woman.
Yeah.
But he adored her, and they really did do everything together, to the point of finding their way into Hitler's Munich apartment when he had fled and was hiding in his bunker in Berlin, and she took a bath in Hitler's bathtub.
Yeah, hence these headlines in the Telegraph. Winslet, I take all my clothes off right now. I don't believe in hiding the truth. The BBC, Kate Winslet says, women should celebrate being a real shape because we can speak to the nudity in it. There's a bit there, there's a bit before. The camouflage scene is great. Is that true?
It's true, yeah.
Tell us about the camouflage scene.
Okay, so Roland Penrose, Lee's lover at the time, who then became her husband and father of her child. So he was enlisted. He was a Quaker, and he was enlisted to paint camouflage, and he would what do you call it?
He was a camouflage development artist in the war.
He was an art dealer and an artist himself in his own right. But that was what he did for the war effort. He was a camouflage specialist, and he would disguise military bases as ice cream parlours on the coast, and that was his job. So he would practice his camouflage on a naked Lee. I know. This is the thing. I mean, we could have made a 12-part series for HBO, but no, we were making a movie. But yes, it's extraordinary the things she did, and I love the fact that you do pick up on the nudity in the film, because we were very, very clear that in lifting her out of the male gaze, at no point in our story could we allow for her to be naked on anyone else's terms but her own.
Yeah.
And we did that so deliberately because it was really important to see a middle-aged woman just being totally free with herself, comfortable in her own skin, and almost not thinking about it.
Yeah, this is
and
who I am.
That was also that time, you know, that was also that era.
And that comes, I would imagine also, that spirit or that fearlessness comes from the Roaring Twenties.
Yeah,
doesn't
absolutely.
it? Because she was a child of the Roaring Twenties, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Amazing. You got to see this film, everyone. Is it going to be on Sky in the end? Is that what happens?
So it's released on Friday, and then after I believe it's 40 days in the cinema, it does then start streaming on Sky. But if you can, and if you can afford to, please do see it on a big screen.
No, absolutely, 100%. It's great. I mean, I watched it on a big telly, so I'm very fortunate. Got a big telly, not quite a cinema. Right, so let's talk about, if you don't mind, you're gonna switch gears. I love it. No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not switching gears?
No, I'm not. I'm just taking a pause because I just want to get it right.
Okay.
So there's a great line at the beginning of the film where somebody says of her in her company when she's being particularly rapier-like, she can see souls. Can you see souls? I think Kate Winslet can probably see souls as well.
I am. I don't know if I can see souls, but I'm pretty good at figuring people out quite quickly. But I have to say, I think it's kind of become a part of my job, especially if I'm playing a person who had really existed.
Yeah.
And if that person is still alive, I really have to get under their skin. But I'm pretty good at sussing people out fairly quickly.
Right. Obviously, she's an American. It's not your first American accent. Where did you go for this one?
Where did I go for this one? Well, she was born in 1907 in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is a little bit upstate. So it's outside of Manhattan.
You're so good
and
at
where
these
did
accents.
Where did I go for this one? So I had 2 recordings of Lee speaking, and one of them is a radio interview that she gave during the day. But you know, in those days, it was all very much like that, and it was very choreographed and almost rehearsed. And there was a kind of a sing-songy nature to her voice, and that was what lent itself so well to radio. So she speaks like that, and I thought, oh my God, I can't speak like that. That's going to sound like, but that's ridiculous.
I'm just going to press pause on you. Can we just have a controlling round of applause for that bit of acting there, which was absolutely awesome. Yeah.
I don't normally do my American accents off the cuff.
I don't normally do my American accents, do I?
No, normally I'm not a performing seal,
Yeah.
but I will be a performing seal for you. So that was the version of Lee that I heard. That wasn't actually that good. That's in the public domain. But then there is a family recording where Lee and a few people in the household and her son Tony, who was a boy at the time, are making a recording to send to Lee's father, who was at home in New York. And she says, "Well, hello, Daddy. How are you? Can you hear the sound of that whiskey pouring into my glass?" And it was a totally different resonance. And she was a smoker and she was a drinker.
Yeah.
And her voice and the history of her life, it sits in her chest and in her throat.
Yeah.
And sometimes with an accent. Like if you're going to do an American who's like that, you got to go up into your head like this. But then if I'm talking about Lee Miller, you can hear that my voice comes right down into my body. And so when I started learning how to do American accents, that was one thing I had to learn quite quickly, because who we are as people affects where our voice sits within our actual physical self. And so with Lee, I had to not only embody her in terms of, as we've talked about, the nudity and being very free in that way, but finding a vocal positioning for her voice actually in myself. It sounds a bit technical and maybe a bit ridiculous, but it's true.
It sounds great.
Or in the case of Mare Sheehan in Mare of Easttown, you just learn to speak with your mouth full. In a Delco dialect, which is very distressing.
Says he draws from what you just said and environment. So he says, well, if it's the Midwest, it's hot and sticky, so your voice is probably a little bit dry. You're probably a little bit tired. There's not much going on, so you got time to talk. That kind of thing.
That's interesting.
So
I haven't heard of that, actually.
It's
wow.
similar but not same.
Yeah. That's
what about? You do smoke a lot in the film. I was thinking, clearly she's a very good smoker, Kate Winslet. Kids, don't try it. Don't
do not. They were herbal. They're herbal. They're very strange
good
things.
Smoking action.
They all smoked. I mean, that was it. They were all smoking in that time.
How was that? I mean, how many do you? How you? Would you say on set? Does this phrase exist on set? This is a smoking take.
Yeah, light them up. That's what they would say.
Light 'em up?
Yeah, the first day did. If you got them, smoke them. And everyone has
so
the
fake,
herbal
fake.
Yeah,
It's a fake take, and it's light them up. We're going for a take.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How exciting.
Well, not that exciting, because herbal cigarettes actually don't smell very nice. They sort of smell a little bit like burning poo, to be honest. So it's a rather odd smell, but they do. The smoke lingers in the air.
First time I ever smelt one was Ronnie Wood used to smoke herbal cigarette. You know that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
It's the first time I ever smelled that. No, these are legal. There's other herbal cigarettes as well. I'm talking about the ones that Kate's referring to.
They're prop things, and it's the same with there's fake beer and there's fake wine, and these things all taste rather
fake
weird,
booze.
but they look the part, and so it serves
a couple more
story.
things about making the movie. Another movie, another costume department. God bless the costume departments.
Yes,
they absolutely nail this one, don't they?
Oh God, I'm so thrilled you said that. So Michael O'Connor, our costume designer, I first worked with him when he was a costume supervisor, which is a totally different job, when I was 22 years old. And our set designer, I worked with for the first time when I was 25. Our first assistant director, the guy who would be light 'em up, he was a floor runner. He was a floor runner on Hamlet when I was 19 and he was 21, and he'd run up and down making cups of tea.
Hamlet.
And so
light 'em up.
Light 'em up. And but for me, Chris, as a producer, properly doing this from start to finish, that was the most wonderful part of it, was being able to lean on those relationships that I formed over the years and have that shared history with people in independent film, which is a totally different experience to something that's funded by a big fat studio. But yes, you're right, the costumes were amazing, and we were lucky to have the access to the archive where a lot of Lee's clothes actually exist, and her army. I mean, I've held her army uniform. I've put that jacket on.
Does that help?
Oh, it makes...
And the smell
Well, it made a huge difference because, you see, the US war correspondent uniform was standard issue, but when you're Lee Miller, you take that standard issue and you march right down to your favourite tailor on Savile Row, and you have it tailored specifically to your shape.
Did this happen?
Yes, this happened.
You are joking
I know,
me.
I absolutely
That's
promise you this
amazing,
happened. And it was
isn't it?
extraordinary. And when I held her uniform, I said to Tony Penrose, her son, I said, my goodness, I said, Tony, do you realise what she's done here? And in the back of the skirt, she had done something I have never, ever, ever seen. And I've worn a lot of costumes and I've touched a lot of period clothing. She had designed an almost crescent-shaped band structured in tiers of a fabric called grosgrain, which is very firm and quite sculpting. And she had the tailor sew this little almost yoke into the back of her skirt. And guess what that does? It flattens the small of your back and makes your tushy perfectly stick out.
Wow.
So she was unbelievable. I had never seen anything like it. So very, very clever woman.
So she passed away in 1977.
Yes, that's right.
So obviously your existence predates that, because I was thinking you could be the reincarnation of her.
Well, it was weird to discover as we were putting the film together that I actually look quite a lot like her.
But you've also got that spunk about you. You've got that verve about you as well.
Well, you've got to have it, Chris.
Yeah, it's great though.
You've got to have
also
it.
multifaceted, interested. You know, aren't you? I'm blessed with a couple of things. Blighted with many, right? But blessed with a couple.
Me too.
Exactly. So I'm blessed with the fact that I love working. I just love working.
Me too.
I've always loved working. I used to fit car windscreens. I love that. Honestly, as much as I love this, you know. And the other thing I'm completely blessed with, I've forgotten.
Think of something else.
So what were we
Quick.
talking about?
We were talking about being multifaceted.
Multifaceted. No,
Yeah,
can't remember.
getting
It's
to
gone.
do what you love.
Do you know what? I love being 58.
Living the dream, baby. Living the dream.
Couple of other things. So she was this photographer, frontline photographer, and you had the box camera, and the clicks are so quiet but so loud. If you know what I mean
Yes,
in the
yeah.
movie, they're so quiet but they're so loud. They're not silly. They're not farcical.
No.
They're sort of clippy. They cut through the audio, but of course wasn't digital then, hasn't been digital that long really, you know, photography, and so frames were limited, and so you had less chance to capture what you needed to, yet she seemed to, as did all photographers then somehow.
Yeah.
Can you just, I don't know, there's no question there, can you just speak to that for a second? Do you know what I mean?
Well, absolutely. So just to talk a little bit about the Rolleiflex camera that Lee Miller used. So I was very lucky. Oh, excuse me. I was very fortunate that I had access to the archive, which meant that I had full access to her camera kit as well. So I really had my hands on her camera case. I could see everything that she had done to accommodate it for her own needs and her very, very tiny hands. So I obviously learnt how to use the Rolleiflex camera. Ours was a complete replica, an exact replica of Lee's actual camera. Now, the Rolleiflex camera, it sits somewhere between the heart and the stomach. And the image is, you look down into the camera. And the shutter speed is incredibly slow. The light meter is very difficult to use and really specific. And if it's off and it won't work. And if the focus is even a tiny bit out, the image is useless. You only get 12 frames on one roll of film. And I was the only person who knew how to change that roll of film, which was kind of great because it just meant that if we had a take that happened to be going on for a little bit longer, I would just change the camera roll as we were going. But it was incredibly important to me that that camera never felt or looked like a prop. Because I think you can sometimes see if an actor feels a bit uncomfortable with what they're doing,
100%.
or if too much is made of it.
Well, you can't
perhaps.
see, you can feel it as a viewer.
Yes, I think so.
You don't even know you're feeling it, but you know something's off.
Yeah, and I just had to make that camera become an extension of my arms so that it just disappeared. And Lee's real skill set as a woman, as a female photographer, and this is what sets her apart, is that in being able to look down at that image as she's taking the photograph, she was able to look into the eyes of the people she was photographing and really see who they were, see into their soul and capture their story whilst also looking to left and right and looking for the next scoop.
You've been shot by Bailey, haven't you? David Bailey?
No, I don't think I ever have.
I
actually.
have.
Have
And
you?
he does exactly the same thing. So he
Right.
doesn't look through the viewfinder. He has the thing on the extension.
Yeah, and he's click,
And he's
click.
talking to you the whole time.
Peter Lindbergh was like that.
Yeah,
Oh,
so he sets the camera exactly where you want it, where he wants the so he knows he's got the shot,
Yeah.
but has he got the person?
Yes, that's
so
right.
he has to get behind the barrier of the camera.
That's it.
And also, it's less like he's shooting you with a gun because he's not got you in his viewfinder. He's in his sights, as it were.
Yeah.
He's with you.
That's it makes an enormous difference to how real the image is, and see, Lee, she was a realist,
Yeah.
and she just didn't believe in hiding behind or from the truth. And I think because she had to learn to live with a trauma herself, she had this very powerful streak of injustice in her, and that served her well in terms of keeping her going through the war.
Some beautiful moments. when she was at the concentration camps, and there's a little girl who was so frightened of this another person in a uniform, taller than she was, looking down on her.
Who she thought was a man.
Be her end,
yeah.
And your character, or Lee, just takes her hat off and shows she's got long
her hair.
And a couple of times it's like, look, I'm a woman. I'm here.
I'm here.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful film.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much. I'm really grateful for that, and thank you for having me on. This was lastminute.com.
Oh,
and
yes!
Here we are. We did it.
We'll always make room for Winslet.
Yay.
Won't we? Anything else you'd like to say before you leave us again?
Hi from Ned and both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi
Thank you
from
very
Ned,
much.
the husband.
I remember what I was going to say. Blessed with work ethic. And loving hard work, and also curiosity. And she was curious.
She was eternally
Curiosity
curious.
is a superpower, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
If you're bored, if you're fed up, if you don't know which way to turn, if you're feeling hatred, get curious. It solves most issues.
This is it, and I have to say, and we've just been talking about cameras, and of course the camera's on the iPhone, but, grown-ups, just get your kids to put the phone down, get outside, get curious, climb a tree, look around. Yeah. You've only got one life, and that was how Lee lived hers.
Kate, you have not disappointed.
Hey, yay! Woo!
All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
It's a brilliant film, Lee, in cinemas this Friday, 13th September, and it will be on your telly before Christmas, and it is must not miss. Well done. Virgin Radio.